Uh, okay, I think I'm okay.
You okay? Okay.
So, Louise, this is how we are human. Okay, so there are two things that I'm just utterly jealous of, envious of, I guess is the word. One, your titles, which are just so incredibly compelling, and whoever does your book design, oh my God. Yeah, hold that up. Show people what that cover looks like. It's incredible. It's incredible. A little snow globe, and I'm just,
Pink inside to match.
yeah. So,
Lovely.
so do you realize how fortunate you are? I mean, the titles are on you, but man, those covers are just,
Yeah, I do realise how grateful I am. First to the covers, I'm very lucky that I know that not all authors get this, but I do have a bit of a say. I've heard horror stories where authors just get sent a cover and say that's it, that's what you're getting. But I do usually get sent about sort of 6 different choices. Some of them might be the same with a different colour or font, and some might have a different image. And 9 times out of 10, we usually agree. It's me, the editor, the designer, and a couple of other people, and we decide.
yeah.
So I am lucky in that regard, and I've always been very happy. And the titles, I realised something the other day thinking about the titles. Most of my book titles are something that someone says in the book, and very often a child.
Really?
Yeah. How to Be Brave, The Mountain in My Shoe, Maria in the Moon. And this is how we are human. He's not a child, but I suppose he's autistic. So somebody maybe that isn't exactly the same as us, shall we say, who doesn't always get a voice. Let's say that maybe. Yeah, they're. I didn't realise that until I was thinking about it. So yeah. So how about your book covers? How much of a say do you get, and when does its title come to you?
Well, okay, so the title is like this whole spiel because it's just a weird situation. So uh, here, I'll hold up my new one that just came out today. So, you
That's
know,
another
yeah,
title.
it's evocative, and I am lucky enough now. This is my first book with a new publisher, and I am lucky enough that when he and I were talking about joining forces, I said I would really like to do my own covers because it's part of my professional background, and he was willing to do that, and so it's nice to have that kind of intimate involvement with um, pre-press kind of stuff because that's the point at which many authors sort of lose control of their book. Like it goes to editing, it gets a cover, marketing has its say, and you're just kind of along for the ride. And I have one really funny story about that. One of my dearest friends was a guy named Richard Wheeler. He wrote Western set um, novels. He was really well known as an author of Westerns, but he wrote more widely than that. But one of his books, and he wrote like 80 of them, which is crazy. He,
Wow. Who's got time to write 80 books?
well, Richard Wheeler did until his time sadly ran out a couple of years ago. But um, he so he had this book, and he gets the book, the initial review copies from the publisher, and it was like buffalo stampeding across the landscape, except they were African Cape buffalo and not American bison, which is quite a different thing. And so Richard says to the publisher, like, "Hey, man, what what are we going to do about this?" And they're like, it'll be fine. Suffice to say that Richard did not find it to be fine ever. I would be sick to my stomach. More than being sick to my stomach, I would be waiting for somebody in a parking lot with a tire iron. I mean, it's just, and I'm not a violent guy, except for like mosquitoes and stuff. So yeah, it was just I couldn't believe it. So give me a like the mini uh, here's what this book is about, and then I will tell you why I responded so strongly to it in a good way, So
Oh, sorry, about my book or about
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
your
okay.
book.
Still
Yeah,
talking about Buffalo Man.
yeah, no, no, no. Let's let that story go. Yeah,
Sorry. You mean this one? This
that the very one I'm speaking of.
very one. Okay. Oh God, I hate doing a brief. I can't do it. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
So we have Sean, sorry, Sebastian, that's the real character, the real person in real life. Sebastian, who's 20 and autistic. We have his mum, Veronica, and we have a high-class escort called Violetta, who is also a nurse, real name Isabel. And she is a high-class escort because her father is very ill and she's having to pay for his care, having to pay for a nursing degree.
right.
Sean has reached 20 and he's just desperate to have sex, meet a girl. And although he's very physically appealing, the minute girls speak to him, you know, they're young girls, they don't quite know how to take him. So he's finding it very difficult to meet someone. And it's becoming an obsession. And his mum, Veronica, thinks she has the answer to this problem, so to speak, because she can't get help anywhere. Because no one wants to talk about this. This is why I wrote the book, to be fair. No, I say no one, not many people. It's the last taboo, isn't it? Disability, being neurodiverse, and sex. It's kind of the last taboo. And so Veronica, Sebastian's mum, approaches Isabel, offers her an obscene amount of money to be with Sebastian. But what she wants is that Sebastian doesn't know, so that he believes Isabel likes him for him.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the fallout. That's all I'll say. You can imagine the consequences.
Sure.
So yeah.
Well, so the reason that I responded so strongly when I sort of found out the outlines of what the book was going to be about is, you know, I wrote several books about a neurodiverse guy, and I was intrigued, instantly intrigued, and also just the slightest bit like, oh man, I should have thought of that, you know, with regard to where you're picking that story up, because I, you know, Edward Stanton, my character, I had to write a second book for him to have sex, you know, like it was just, he was in a different place, and he had gotten to a much older age than Sebastian.
Yeah.
And I just thought, man, you're in areas here that have a ton of things we can talk about, you know, marginalized people, you know, to use the old phrase, you know, the square pegs in the round holes, and you know, sex work is work, you know, which, man, I'm so glad that we're finally getting some traction on that idea, because it's, you know, it's horrible where that's been pigeonholed, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to not only get the autistic character right, because I have to say it was inspired by a real situation and a real young man. So one of my really good friends, Fiona, is a radio presenter over here in the UK. We met for lunch once, and her son Sean is 20, he's autistic. And she was having this real life situation of him obsessed with meeting a girl, and Fiona struggling to teach him about consent, about relationships. Sure. And she sought help. She went to see people. She went to a sex clinic, all kinds of things. There was no advice out there. She was at her wit's end. And one day she said to her husband, they never did this, but she said it in an emotional moment. Why don't we just take him to Amsterdam? We just pay someone. And she told me this, and she said, am I an awful person? And as a writer, straight away, I said, no, but there's such a story there. I said, you're not, but oh my word, there's a story there. And she said, Louise, write it, because nobody talks about this, nobody, and we will help you. Sean and Fiona guided me. We acted scenes out verbally.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I'm very fortunate that I had this story given to me. I really am.
Yeah. No, I think it's, I'm just, I'm so taken with the concept, and you know, and I knew, having read some of your previous books, I knew that a story like that that requires the sensitivity that does and the empathy, I knew it would be in good hands. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
That goes in the same way you asked me to do it in a nutshell, but it won't be a nutshell, will it?
yeah, no,
In a nutshell,
so
your new one. Tell us about that.
yeah, so here, I'll hold it up again. And it will be a beautiful life. Oh, there's Helen. I'm letting her in.
I'll let Helen in. Just in time to hear about your book.
Yeah, well, she's read it, so
Oh, right.
it'll be, here she comes.
She
Um,
can see us. So hello,
oh,
hello.
hi, Helen. You can say hello to us in the chat or ask a question, whatever you'd like to do. So my book, for me, it always starts with a character, and it's usually, I don't know that this is particularly unique. It starts with a character at some kind of crossroads. So several years ago, I started doing pipeline inspection work, and I did it completely because I was bored. Like I just wanted to learn something new. And it had some travel that was attached to it, although it's mostly travel to, like, when you're planning a vacation in the UK, you're definitely not saying, let's go to Moberly, Missouri, so I started doing it, and despite the many, many drawbacks of that kind of work, most notable of which is when you get done working for the day, you don't go home and see the people you love. You sit in a hotel and you wait until you go back out. So I have a line in the book where my pipeliner's wife complains to him. He says, yeah, you get paid for 12 hours of work and you give the other 12 away for free because you're not here. So anyway, I responded to the work in such a way that I thought, okay, here comes a character who's quite unlike you. He does what you're doing, but he's unlike you in every other way, which to me as a writer is an enormously appealing thing, is to figure out what this guy is and what his story is and why he is the way he is, why he made the choices he made that have all delivered him to this place where his life is about to get blown apart. And really what's happened is he's grown old. He's relatively old for a pipeliner. And his wife has decided that she can live the life she wants to have completely separate from him. So why have the marriage anymore? His daughter has grown up and he has sort of um, a relationship with her that is good, but seems to be rooted back when she's 11 or 12 years old, and she's like 32 now. And um, so and then he also has a new coworker, a woman, which it's not a line of work you see a lot of women in, which is why I wanted to put a woman there, who is about his daughter's age, and they form an intimate relationship that is not sexual, and it sort of mirrors what's going on with his daughter. And so he's just kind of stumbling through and trying to, figure out how do you, when you've ignored all these threads of your life for so long, how do you pick them up and make something operational out of them? And, there's I wouldn't be giving away too much to say that, there's a divorce. I mean, it's almost immediate. But there's this really wonderful moment between him and his ex-wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, where they just sort of reconcile everything. And and it has one of they've started to be patented, and I think they irritate people, but it's the only way I know how to do it. It's one of these open-ended things, because I never feel like the story really ends. I just step off of it, and
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, I hear you on that. A lot of people don't like open endings, do they? But I think it's
No,
really
they
good.
want it wrapped up, and it doesn't interest me. So,
I like closure, but not an ending.
right.
Maybe some answers. I think people need answers, don't they? But yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, well, and I like to put the responsibility for the answers beyond the book on the reader, like, well, what do you think happens? If there's any number of ways this can go, what do you think? And some people dig that, and some people like, no, 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 you tell me, you know. And I don't know that I'm ever going to get together with those people, So
That makes me wonder whether I might try and write a book that ends with a question. I don't think I've done that.
yeah, yeah. Well, the first Edward book, it ends with him looking across this street, trying to decide whether or not he's going to walk across it and
Yeah,
say hello to his friend. And I didn't think I could end it any other place,
yeah,
because if
yeah.
he crosses the street in that moment, then okay, then you got to keep going because something happens then, And I didn't want him to be, to have resolved that he never would.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, some books, do you know, I think when I've written the more crimey books, they need a resolution because people really would be annoyed if you didn't resolve those books.
right, right.
Can you imagine? Sorry, I'm not going to tell you who did it.
That's right. That's right. Well, see, this is another advantage of the fact that you write so widely, which is another thing that I admire. You do psychological stuff. You do whimsy. You do straight up crime. You know, and I
I
I
think I
wish.
like whimsy though. I think I like whimsy best. I seem to get my
Yeah,
views for my emotional ones.
yeah. I had there's a well-known author here in America, but he also lives in Montana, a guy named Tom McGuane. And he said one time that his irritation with books set in Montana in the American West was, you know, nobody ever gets a pizza delivered, because it's all about the hard earth and the land and how the land shapes us and all this. And these are all worthy themes because if you live out here, that's certainly true. Um, but I live in the largest city in Montana, in the most suburban part of town, and like, big day for me is going to Target. So I there is that element of, we live the lives that anybody else lives. And I think that's what he was getting at. So anyway, I sent him a copy of my book in which pizza was delivered in Montana. Um, and uh, but I think about that a lot. I don't want to I don't want to bag on anybody's books, but one of the things that before I ever wrote, that I found wanting in some of the literary books that I read was, don't these people ever laugh? Don't these people ever do something silly? And I think you could argue that I get a little too silly sometimes in my books, but I want laughter. I try to make myself laugh initially, which I think is probably easier than making someone else laugh for me. But I want that. I want that to be part of it. You know, it's
Yeah.
part of life. It's a hugely important part of life. So
Yeah, I don't know if I have silliness as such, but I always have dark humour.
yeah,
All
yeah,
the
yeah,
although what's weird is that a few people that I've met who meet me in real life, because I am like the way you sound, I'm very silly, a big joker,
yeah,
always smiling. Um, they've been quite shocked and said your books are quite serious and deep, and then you meet you and you're just complete maniac. Like
yeah,
I see my books
yeah,
are, you know what
yeah,
I mean, like drawing the boobs in the books and all that kind of thing. Like you know, you write quite seriously, but you're not. And I think the books are a safe place to explore all those dark issues.
sure, yeah,
Which are quite scary, really.
yeah,
Safe place to do it because it's fiction. And then
right,
in the other world, I can smile and laugh. So yeah.
yeah. Whoops, hold on. Am
I
I
think
still
you
there?
can saying you've only got 9 minutes, but I think you can click something to carry on.
Well, it said upgrade. I don't know if I'm going to upgrade. Um,
Okay. If it
but
doesn't,
Where am I? Where am I? I'm borrowing my wife's, there we go. My wife's computer because mine flipped me upside down when I tested it this morning. And, I thought maybe I could do we're coming to you live from the, the International Space
Yeah.
Station or something, but yeah, so.
Oh,
Because, I'm going to assume that, these 9 minutes are what we have. So does anybody have a question
yeah.
for Louise or for me?
Chat. I think people were just saying hi though in the chat.
Yeah, you can unmute yourselves if you'd like.
Oh yeah, definitely unmute yourselves. I'd love to hear people.
Can I, or I can, yeah, I can't unmute you, but you
You
can
do it,
unmute yourself.
Master.
Yeah, if somebody wants to ask something.
I think you're all unmuted now. No, they're still muted. Well, let me think of a question then.
Okay.
Right, so when I finish a book, right, I always say to myself, I'm going to take a few weeks off, right, or a month off, or this, that, and the other, right?
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever happens. I'm just wondering, do you? Because the minute I give myself permission to kind of not write, take the time off. Number one, that's when the best ideas come in and all the inspiration floods in because that's a build yourself up. And number two, I then remember, which I already know, but I remember that I love writing. Time off. It isn't time off because I miss the writing and I absolutely love it. Oh, we've got a question.
Yeah.
How has the pandemic changed your writing and publishing processes? All right, you first, Craig.
Okay. Well, hi, Jill. I'm so glad you came. Really what happened in the pandemic is early on, like in the first month, Elisa and I moved from Maine, where we had moved a couple of years ago, back to Montana. And we were holed up initially in this small condo while we waited for the renters of our house that we had never sold to vacate so we could move back in. And something when I got back on Montana terra firma happened, and this book that I'd really been struggling with just came pouring out of me. So, so I don't know if that was pandemic related or not. It might have just been pandemic adjacent. But I'm grateful, in those months of just fear and not knowing when I was going to see my friends again, and worrying about seeing my folks, and just all these things. I was grateful to have the company of writing. I'm not like you though. I don't love writing. I love rewriting. So I always have to kind of, yeah, right. So, well, what about for you?
Yeah, do you know what the pandemic gave me? It gave me time because I do work as a theatre usher and the theatre was shut. So I've always written and worked. So for the first time in my life, I was just writing. And so I wrote more than usual. I wrote 2.5 books last year. I finished my memoir and then I wrote a very dark dystopian book, which is just not like me at all. I was in a very, very angry place when I wrote that.
Right.
I don't know if you guys, how much of our news you get, but one of our ministers over here, Rishi Sunak, he, during the pandemic, obviously the arts were in crisis because the theatres were shut, there were no films being made. And he had the suggestion of we just all retrain and do something else. So there was obviously an outrage. And I started thinking, can you imagine a world without art, without books? And that was where my dystopian book came from. It's about a future world where fiction is banned. Oh. And I was really angry when I wrote this book. So yeah, it gave me time. The pandemic gave me time, which is a gift in itself, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Well, I was going to say when you were talking about not stopping, I did stop. Elisa and I released a romantic comedy a couple of years ago, but this is my first solo in 4 years. And I really was not sure I wanted to keep doing it. And it was just my energy was down, and I'd had a break with my publisher. It wasn't acrimonious, but I was still like, oh God, what do I do from here? Oh, Sue, pig tracking is fascinating. I don't have to make it fascinating. It just is. Um, no, it's really not, but it's solitude. So anyway, sorry, quick diversion for Sue. I wanted that to be answered, but so anyway, what I found is that the time off did replenish me because, now I've got a runway of like 5 things I want to do, and I'm trying to figure out, how I'm going to prioritize them. I never like to make a promise about anything, but I do have another Edward idea that's just got to kind of come along a little bit.
That's good. We'll all be happy about that.
Yeah, but it was, and I love the people who love Edward. I love them. But I cannot just make him happen, like he's got to step forward and say, I want to go. And when he does, I'll listen to him. And I can hear him sort of rattling around in the back, but I'm just not sure yet what it is. So
that sounds nice.
Yeah.
As I said, there was another comment from Ellie. What was your idea generation like for the dystopian book? How far are you into it? Well, Ellie, I have written it. It is with my agent.
Yay! Yay!
May have news soon. For now.
Okay.
Watch this space. It's probably my proudest book because it's the most unlike anything and I know I always change genre. I know I do that, but this really is unlike anything I've ever written before. So yeah, I'm really excited.
Is it still gonna have that heart in it? Because
yes, oh God, yes. There's the emotional aspect is there. Yes.
Yeah. Because I know when I read, I can't remember if it was if it was the diabetic book or the How to Be Brave, that was inspired by, right, or if it was the next one. But I remember when I was reading it, that it was my first Beech, and I was like, oh my God, the amount of heart that is in this thing. It was just, which to me, and I'm not saying that there were issues with the book, because it was lovely. I mean, it was completely lovely. But heart, to me, can cover up a whole lot of things that the author wants to do that might not land with you, is if you can hear that beating heart and you can feel it, that's a good book. That's a good book, regardless of, that's why some, like 3-star reviews, I'm just enormously happy to get, because people will say, gosh, I didn't really connect with this, but I could feel it, and that's great. That's great. So.
I can't write a book if there isn't a heart, as in if I don't feel the heart when I'm writing it, I can't write it. So
yeah.
Now the test is less than a minute, but I've been in these things before where it goes longer.
And they tend to, yeah.
So should we say bye in case, and then if it goes, it goes. If it doesn't,
yeah. So bye maybe, but not necessarily.
Maybe. Thank you so much.
Yeah. This will be like, most of the relationships I've ever had. See ya, except you're going to see me in a few days. So yeah. So
yeah, it might cut out, it might not. So we'll see how
yeah. It's still trying to push the upgrade. So maybe now that we're starting to gather again, they're like, no, we're not giving you extra Zoom, man.
It was lovely to see you. I've met you in on screen. Lovely to see Lisa as well on screen.
Yeah,
not seen you moving before.
yeah. It's pretty remarkable to behold. Yeah. So.
Oh, no, that's love, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Yeah. So
I know we don't know whether to launch into anything big, do we? Because we don't know what's going to happen.
No, I know. Like, we're all waiting, to see if
it's the end of it.
Yeah. Good.
Oh, Helen said, sorry she was late. I've really enjoyed what I caught.
Well,
can't wait to see you, Helen, sometime.
Yeah, Helen is like the one person. Like, I have a lot of reasons to go to England, but